Hello! Today is a special day because we have a new video. Today we're going to talk about learning. Today we're going to talk about our own process of learning and my experience with what I say master teachers. Master teachers we will categorize as any teacher that is ascended, that is advanced, that exists on higher dimensions, planes, heavens. Any teacher, whether it's a being or a person, that is helping you, guiding you. It might even be your spirit guide. That is a teacher. Sometimes your teacher is your spirit guide, and they're with you, and they show up when you need them. Now, so we're using the term master teacher to encompass a wide variety of teachers. Okay? Now, the master teacher, what's unique about the master teacher is the master teacher does not give you the answer. The master teacher does not solve your problems. And quite often, the master teacher does not detail the solution, right? In times, there are occasions I have seen where the person, the individual, needs a piece of information. For some reason, they just can't get to it. They're afraid. A lot of times you're afraid to go there, to think that. And so they'll say a word just to give you some kind of hope. Sometimes it's just to give you hope. But again, many of us, especially those following my videos, are on a path, on a spiritual path, that you're not just living a material life. You're living a spiritual path. You're on a path to ascension. There are many levels. I talk about this place as a school. That's a higher level. I think that's a higher level of understanding. But there are many levels of understanding, be it spirituality, be it technology, be it multidimensionality, right? So, again, we're using the term spiritual, okay? And it has many connotations and many definitions. And we're not going to religion. Religion is something else. So this ascension, many of you here are for the ascension, for spiritual learning. And so you're in contact with master teachers, having many forms, whether it's a spirit guide, whether they speak through others, whether they speak through your dreams. And the goal of the master teacher, again, the key term is teacher. And the place you live in is a school. Teacher, school. You are a inference, right? Inference. You are a student. So that's a master teacher. The master teacher will say, I am a teacher and you are in a school. And your job is to read between the lines. That makes me a student. That's the master teacher will not say you are a student. And then you got to go, well, what does that mean? The master teacher will say, I am a teacher. This is a school. And it's your job to figure out what is this? What is this? What kind of teacher is it? And does that make me a student? So the master teacher guide you to your own understanding. They guide you. They nudge you to your own understanding. And therefore, what you learn is particular to you. Because the master teacher knows that this is a school and there are rules, right? Everything is a test. So let's go back to school. When you were in school and you're writing a test, you're writing a midterm exam, or maybe you're in school right now, you're writing a test. Can you go up to the teacher and say, "Teacher, can you answer question number 8? You can't. It's a test. You have to do it on your own. And then you get graded. So we take that analogy to life, reality. Reality is a school. You are a student. The master teacher, the assistants, they can't give you the answer. They can't tell you what to do with your life. They can't tell you how to get out of a situation. So how do they teach? Well, they use advanced ways. What's an advanced way of teaching? Well, something like a coincidence, right? What's a coincidence? You're going through particular problems and you go to the coffee shop and you meet your friend. And your friend has some knowledge about your particular situation. I'm trying to find the right light here. Coincidence. You're going through a particular marital problem or a relationship problem and you have a dream. And in the dream, you go through a certain experience. You see things. When you wake up, the dream might give you some clues on what to do with your situation. Right? Now, sometimes your particular situation requires a bit more involvement. The answer is not within you, or you don't have the skill. You don't have the skill. So they might, the teachers, they might guide you to learn something new. So you might find yourself taking a course, right? You might find yourself taking a course. You might find yourself starting a new hobby. You're starting a new hobby. Why am I starting a new hobby? Well, you think, I'm very busy, I have a job, I have my leisure time, I want to spend time with my friends. Do I have time for a new hobby? As a spiritual learner, you have to think maybe that hobby is providing you with some new skill. Sometimes a hobby can be an internal development, right? If you do painting, that might be developing your dream ability, imagination, right? And then colors. Colors might be healing your emotional situation. So, you know, just by painting can be therapy. And once you've done the painting, when you dream, the dreams will be clearer. You'll more easily understand the symbology in the dream. And that might inspire you to take a new career. You might get in, you might do something more creative, and that might take you out of, right? So the hobby of painting may open up your dream complex and your imagination and your emotions, which have been all bottled up, and that might lead you into a new career. See the steps. I'm not saying this is your particular situation, but I'm saying the master teacher might guide you to a new hobby. That hobby however long it takes, might guide you to further understanding of self. Further understanding of self might cleanse you of that old persona, the old beliefs. It might open up new possibilities, new skills, new energy, and that might lead you to the next level of your learning. Because the master teacher will look at you. Now, the master teachers are advanced. They often exist in other dimensions. Let's see if we can do this. They exist in other dimensions. So they have access to all kind of knowledge. They might even know your future. They might have read your contract. So your contract is to do X by a certain age. And right now, you're not going to get there. The master teacher says, well, I can't get them from this position to their rightful position because they're just blocked up. They're off the path. It's hard to communicate with them. It's just not going to happen. So the master teacher has to figure out, okay, how do I get that person from here back onto the path here so that they will in time be back on their path, on their contract. They will fulfill their contract according to what they came here to do. You came here to do it, and they're helping you to do it. They are teachers. So the master teacher, the person, the spirit guide, will say, okay, well, we're going to get them to do this, we're going to get them to do this, and then, you know, they're going to guide you. They're not going to tell you there's a job opportunity, more money. You say, well, that was a job opportunity, more money. You see a beautiful girl, right? Now you're in a relationship, right? The teacher, hey, there's an attractive woman, there's a handsome guy. That guy's interesting. In life, though, you know, you're going to have the detractors. You're going to have the counters. So the master teacher might guide you to a new relationship and say, hey, that's a pretty girl, she's interesting. And then the detractor might, you know, scare the girl off. So it's not a straight, we don't live in a vacuum. I tell people, I say this all the time, we don't live in a vacuum. The television thinks you live in a vacuum. People think you live in a vacuum. A lot of spiritualists think you live in a vacuum. If I believe, I will achieve. It doesn't work that way because we live in a situation, there's a counter influence, attacks, right? There are good magicians and there are bad magicians. So if your master teacher guides you to something and somebody else doesn't want you to go there, they're going to influence you, right? And both of these things might be off channel, non-visual. And you may have this internal battle, should I, right? The master teacher might say, this is a bad relationship you're in. And you're trying to get out, and it's difficult to get out of the relationship. The counterforce is saying, give her a chance, give him a chance. He'll make it, he'll do it. He's not that bad. And so the heart has to kind of, right? That's how it usually works. When you become more advanced, when you become more ascended or awake, you can separate, you know, the good influence from the bad influence. But when you are not advanced or you're in a transition, you can't tell the good from the bad, and you probably don't know yourself enough, and so you have this struggle. You stay in a relationship too long, you work at the wrong company, you hang around with the wrong people. They're negative influence, but you want to be friends. You don't want to be lonely, so you hang around with these bad people. But in fact, they're bad people. So you're better off being alone than being with these toxic individuals. So the more advanced you become, these things are more clear, right? You're more ascended. So I think we should respect that part of ascension, growth, spiritual growth, that there are the right things to do, but there are attacks. Some of these attacks can come from family members. Some of them can come from external sources, surprise bills, financial hardship, colleagues, illness, whatever it is, previous romances, traumas from the past. Those are all there. I think if you've been following my work, you understand that this stuff is there, that we don't live in a vacuum. And I'd like to I would like to remind people that this doesn't change. The higher you go, those negative forces don't go away. They become more powerful, they become more deceptive. They don't go away. The dark doesn't go away. It's what happens is when you get more advanced, you can separate the difference between the dark and the light. And so you're more easily to see the light, but you still can be influenced, right? You always can be influenced. And there's nothing wrong with being influenced and making a mistake and hanging around with the wrong people. What throws you off the path is when you do it for too long, because then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So the master teacher is there guiding you to a new hobby. Sometimes they'll guide you. In my particular work, because I do a lot of writing, a lot of my ascension has come from my writing. Whether it's a screenplay or a novel or a nonfiction book, because the nonfiction book forces me to do research, and then I'm researching. When I wrote the book on DNA, well, I didn't know anything about DNA, or very little, so I had to research DNA. I had to research microbiology. So I'm learning about the human being, biology, life works, creation. And then I had to study Gnosticism. And then I had to read the text, the Gnostic texts, which are very different, very spiritual, very advanced, they're very old. So in order to write the book, I had to learn about microbiology, I had to learn about Gnosticism, and a bunch of other stuff, right? Spirituality, Buddhism. So the master teacher may not say you need to study Buddhism, but if you write a book and you have to research Buddhism, then that goal is accomplished, right? So the book becomes a vehicle. The book becomes a vehicle for further learning. Now, if you said, well, I'm not going to do that book because it's not going to make any money, nobody's going to buy it, I'm too tired, now you've just closed off that opportunity. And in my particular case, the books, per se, did not sell very well. Some didn't sell at all. But the goal was not to make bestsellers. The goal was ascension. And I'm sure they're going to sell someday. Right? So as a spiritual learner, again, we're talking spiritual learner, you can't spend, or you have to decide how much of your time you dedicate to spiritual learning, your ascension. You have to decide that. And that determines how far you get and if you're going to graduate. And that is also determined by your incarnation contract. That is also determined by how many times you've been here and why you're here. Are you here to learn? Are you here to teach? What are you here for? What you're here for is different than me and anybody. We're all different. I don't know why you're here. You need to figure that out. And the teachers guide you to learn that stuff. You may meet certain people, and that might lead you into certain discussions and certain friendships. You might come into a certain amount of money, and then you might do something with that money, right? You might start a new project, you might start a new hobby, there might be a coincidence. Sometimes when, I think I've told this story before, and maybe it's relevant. You know, sometimes when you don't listen to the master teacher might wake you up using a harsher method. So if you've had a harsher method, it's because you're not listening. This is my understanding, this is my opinion. This is not written in stone. So there was this girl. I knew her secondhand. I didn't know her directly. But I had been in contact with her. And this girl had some, let's say, emotional problems, growing up problems. She was probably in her 20s, mid to late 20s. And she refused to grow up. She refused to make changes. She refused to grow up. She was hanging on the dreams of a girl, of a childhood. She was waiting for those dreams to materialize, you know? I'm gonna be this, and I'm gonna be that, and I'm supposed to have this, and I'm supposed to have that. Wah. So she kept resisting and just having these outbursts. And I said to her, I wrote to her, I said, listen, if you don't change, you know, change will come to you. It's better you just move on. And the way I am, I just basically tell people and offend people with the truth. It's a problem, but that's just the way I am. So about a week later, she has a car accident. A minor car accident. And she was scared for her life, and then she's starting to think, okay, maybe I should change. Maybe, she said, maybe that was a sign. And then a few days later, she said, no, I'm gonna wait. She went right back to the previous personality, right? I'm gonna wait, I'm not gonna change, I'm the way I am. I am the way I am. I wrote again to her, I said, look, that is clearly a sign, because I was watching and I was in contact. I said, that's clearly something's going on. You better change. You're falling back. And so, of course, she didn't listen. About a week after, she had another car accident. And the car was totaled, written off. And she didn't get hurt. she was unhurt. The car was completely written off. And then I said, you better do something. And then she changed. Because and then she made some changes. She started to make changes, and then I lost contact. So I don't know what happened after that. But I think she'd probably have this kind of tumultuous life. But the next step, she would end up in the hospital. And so that is, that's an example of you can say the universe, but sometimes it's the master teacher which works through the universe, through reality. Says, we need you to do something, and you're just not listening, and then they're going to cause as an accident. You know, if you have an accident and then another accident, then you don't, the third one is going to be a big one. I had that myself, actually. I had that myself about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I was going through, there was a big shift, and I've always gone through a lot of spiritual growth, but there was this really big shift, and I was impacted by this shift in reality, this major shift. And I said to myself, no problem, I've gone through I've done all the work. I'll just, it's going to be a little uncomfortable, we'll get through it. Well, lo and behold, I had a car accident. Somebody hit me, and almost I was going to get out of the car, and then this truck ripped right through and smashed and took off my my side view mirror. It would have taken me out had I stepped out. So that was close. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. I said, but okay, I can handle it. It was minor, right? If it was bigger, something would have happened. 2 or 3 days later, I have another car accident. Again, I didn't do it, but somebody hit me from behind. And then I said, that's it, stop. I stopped, I pulled back because there was going to be another one. I felt the next one would be pretty serious, right? So I could see the sign, right? So sometimes the teacher is saying, okay, slow down, take a step back, reassess, maybe you need to make some change. Even though you've made changes, even though I have been changing, even though I have followed change, even though I've been intensely focused on this kind of stuff. So it still happens. In my case, you would say a small accident is enough to wake me up, but in some people, they need a big wake-up call. So whether it's a car accident, whether it's a disease, whether it's a divorce, there's a divorce, well, you're forced to change. You're in the hospital. Whenever you go to the hospital, what happens? When you go to the hospital, you start to reassess what's important in life. Had you not gone to the hospital, you would not reassess. You would think you're indestructible, you're immortal. I can do whatever I want. This is the vacuum. I believe it, I can achieve it. No. If you're off the path, if you fall off the path, boom. When you're in when something happens, a crisis, you reassess. And that's what it's there for, because you're not listening. So that might be the master teacher. That's sometimes the spirit guide. The spirit guide will cause you to have an accident. The spirit guide will cause you to bump into somebody. The spirit guide will cause you to have a fight with somebody so that you can break the relationship. I had enough. Sometimes you don't know. The more advanced you become, the more you're aware. The more you can see, right? The more ascended you are, the less you see coincidences are coincidences and mistakes are mistakes. You don't see that, right? The more advanced you are, there are no coincidences, there are no mistakes. When you're less advanced, less ascended, you see mistakes and coincidences. You see problems, you see crises, you see suffering. So the master teacher will guide you. And oftentimes, you need to go through a sequence. You need to give it the time to make the change. You can't go from your low point here to the next point overnight. And the movies teach you that, and the television teaches you that, but this just not the way it works. It takes time. So you want to transition, it takes a period of time, right? And you have to go through the steps. You have to be willing to do the work. Maybe you start exercising and you start doing a new hobby and you start hanging out with different people or spending time with yourself for a while. And you're moving and all of these things, and it takes a period of time. It's just like when a woman gets pregnant, it takes about 9 months to have a baby, right? So it's 9 months from conception to birth. Now, if let's say that's your process, that's your process of growth. It takes a certain period of time. Now, if the woman says, "Well, no, I'm not waiting 9 months. I want the baby out now at 3 months." And if you take the baby out at 3 months, you have a dead baby. You have an aborted fetus, right? While we understand pregnancy, but this spiritual pregnancy is more difficult to understand, right? Because we don't have all the information, and there's a lot of beliefs and ideology and misinterpretation and negative influences, self-understanding. But you need to give it the time. If you're going through a life transition, you need to give it the time, and you need to do the work. And so it might take 9 months. It might take 2 or 3 years, right? And each time you think, well, that was the first year, that was so difficult, I hope it's over. Maybe it's not. Maybe it needs another year. You got to give it the time. You can't say, I'm aborting this thing. Because once you do that, then you might create problems. That's when you might go off the path into, you might relapse, you might connect with the wrong people, you might fall back, you might go into addictions. That's where you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable during your spiritual transition. You're vulnerable, and so if you don't give it the time, you got to give it the time. It's a process. It takes however long it takes. If it takes 3 years, it takes 3 years. If it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. If it takes 6 years, it takes 6 years. You have to respect the time that it takes for you. Maybe the other guy takes 3 months, and maybe you need 3 years. Right? Maybe you got to go back to school. That could take a year, and then you got to learn. You got to put the things into practice. That takes another 6 months. That's already 18 months. And during that 18 months, how am I going to live? How do I do things? So that's the master teachers. They're guiding you to the spiritual growth, and the other stuff you're going to have to figure out. Right? It's not about hardship. I mean, you're not supposed to have always hardship. But you have to remember you're here to grow spiritually according to your own level. And the master teacher will guide you to your own understanding. And so, if the master teacher guides me, let's say a book. The master teacher guides the first person to write a book. And they write a book on how to pick up women. And the master teacher guides another person to write a book, and that person writes a book on a conspiracy theory. And the master teacher guides another person to write a book, and that person writes a novel on a thriller. Each person comes to their own level of understanding, right? And that's the way the master teachers work. They don't tell you. They don't tell you. They guide you. And then according to your own level, you decide what that understanding is. And then what you do, that identifies your level of spiritual growth, your ascension. And if you are ascended, if you are advanced, you will do something that is ascended or advanced. If you are less advanced, if you are very low level, you will do something superficial and egotistical. And then the master teacher can see, gee, I guided A, B, C, and this is what I get. And then they know exactly where you're at. So when I did the book on DNA, I could have written anything. Instead, I came up with what I came up with, and that tells them where I'm at. And once they know where you're at, then the next lesson will be based on that. So you should always take it serious, respect it, give it your 100%, just as your job. Give your job 100%, give your family 100%, and give your spiritual growth 100%. Your magical growth, if you're into magic, 100%. Because what follows is based on what you have put out. And so if you show if you show you don't know much, then the next level, the next lesson is not going to be much, right? And over a period of time, you will realize you've shortchanged yourself, and you're going to have to come back. Okay. Master teachers, they come in many forms. Don't limit yourself. The form, it's a coincidence, it's synchronicity, it's a mistake, it's an accident, it's a new hobby, it's a new person, it's an idea, it's an epiphany, it's a dream, whatever it is. Respect it. Respect the fact that this is a school and you are being guided.